Hello and welcome to the very first weekly NUFC360 podcast. Some of you might be used to seeing us, well, not seeing us because hearing us over on the podcast. We've now moved it live to the YouTube channel. And for this week, for the first week, we're joined with Ben and Chris. First thing that we're going to do and we're just going to look at is just go with the first subject, which we think is the one which we'll probably need to find and get an answer to. And that is, are we finally safe? So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to you, Ben, and I'm going to ask you, do you think that we are safe now?
I personally do. Statistically and historically, it does look good for us now. Obviously, I know there's the Burnley and Everton don't have too bad of games left, but I think we're the only sort of team down there that we've got great momentum, and I think our form recently as well, despite some of the losses, the performances have been so much better, and I think we've now got that quality where. And even that sharpness that is sort of carrying us over the line at the moment. And he's, like I was saying, statistically, so I worked over the last decade. The average points needed to survive is 35. And I think, Mark, you mentioned before that no team, I think, had ever been relegated or something with, what was it?
No team with 34 points at 31 games has been relegated.
Yeah. And I think as well, looking at the sort of remaining fixtures, I mean, we've got 2 home games in a row against Palace and Leicester, who they're decent sides, but I think with the way we play at St James Park at the moment, and we've only lost once at St James Park since Eddie Howe's been in. It's became a fortress again. And then as well as that, you've got the likes of Norwich and Burnley left to play. So for me, I think personally now we are safe.
Now, bearing in mind the one game that we did lose at St James Park under Eddie Howe was Manchester City.
Exactly.
So I think we can give him that one.
Yeah.
Now, Chris, I know even though we'd won on now this thing, was it the win against Wolves that maybe give you the confidence if you did think that was staying up, or was it the defeat to Norwich for Burnley that sort of did that, or do you think that we're still not safe?
I think, to be honest, I thought we were pretty much safe for a while now. I was down at Southampton for the win a good few weeks ago, and I think actually that for me, in terms of momentum and in terms of the kind of getting the points on the board at the rate we were, I think that was the kind of moment for me that I think it kind of, okay, obviously we're still not mathematically safe, but I think kind of put a marker down for us. If you look at the kind of what the bookies are saying, the bookies are very rarely wrong. They've got us down as 50-1 to go down. And yes, okay, maybe in the Grand National, a horse last weekend, one that was 50-1. But putting that aside, I think it's very unlikely that we're going to go down at this point. I think for the very good reasons that Ben has mentioned, the fixtures that we've got, yes, we do have a little difficult run before the end of the season. But if you look at sides like Everton, they've got a really difficult run. And then Burnley as well. They're playing quite a few sides that do have, something to play for. So they've got West Ham, they've got Wolves, they've got Watford, who, yes, they're probably going to go down, but they do have something to fight for, and also Spurs as well. So in terms of the fixtures that the opposition teams have, I think that, it's going to be difficult for them. I think the final thing that I would say is that, the quality of the players that we've got to come back, we've done, pretty much, all of this run without Callum Wilson, and a good proportion of it without Kieran Trippier. And we know how influential and important they are to us. So I think once they come back, I think, 34 points with 7 games to go, 10 points ahead of Burnley, albeit them having 1 game in hand. Mathematically, we're not safe, but I think, in reality, we have been safe for a little while now, and actually probably a little longer than the last week or two, to be honest.
Now, to pause ask the question is, can we still qualify for Europe? I think that might be a little bit beyond this season, to be fair, but yeah, you never know. Stranger things have happened. Yeah, it happened with Glenn Roeder.
Yeah, I think that's maybe a little bit aspirational from Paul, and good on him for the optimism. Maybe next season, but this season, it would take some doing, to do that. So, I like the optimism.
I love it.
I think, didn't someone do the stat of if we had the same sort of run as we had all season as we did now, we would be looking at a position of being probably in contention for a European spot.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the stats since the end of the transfer window, in terms of points picked up, we're third. And yes, okay, that's a very kind of selective reading of the fixtures. But to be behind only Liverpool and Spurs just shows you how kind of amazing a job Eddie Howe has done. So yeah, it's kind of ifs and buts and hypotheticals, but yeah, the job that Eddie Howe has done has been kind of amazing. But yeah, too little, too late, I think, for Europe this season.
This man here.
I think what people underrate as well is not obviously loads of people jump to the signings. Do you know what I mean? And don't get us wrong, obviously they've been significant, but it's all the players that we had before that people thought were a bit useless or maybe not helpful to the squad. Even so like Jordan, obviously Kraft, players like that who've definitely picked up and have shown their true potential under Eddie Howe, which is another thing obviously to be mentioned as well. Which is fantastic.
Now, Jack has asked this question, which is, what would be our dream signing for next season?
I mean, we're being linked with everyone, aren't we? So, take your pick. But I think for me, the last couple of weeks, and particularly in the last week, there's been a lot of links. Admittedly, a lot of other clubs have been linked with him, but Darwin Nunez from Benfica, a really exciting player. I think it would be... it was someone that we talked about in January, and obviously, I think we're too close to the drop at that point. Obviously, we all know how that kind of played out. It will be really interesting if we kind of go back, in for him in the summer. We apparently have scouted him for a little while. It would be quite a statement signing. I think he's really exciting. And yeah, that would be kind of quite some coup to beat the likes of kind of Man City and Arsenal and so on to his signature. So for me, it's got to be a striker. We all know that we need a striker. So I would say Darwin Nunez.
What about, and I know it's someone who we went for in January, but would you go back in for Jesse Lingard?
I think, pretty much any club in the league, aside from maybe the top 2 or 3, would kind of be fools not to go in for Lingard. It was disappointing that we obviously didn't get him in the January window. It sounds like he did want to come to us. We all know what he can do and what he did on loan at West Ham. I think, you'd have to be an idiot to not want him in the side. I think, he's a really good player. He seems to be interested in Newcastle as a project. So yes, please sign me up right now.
Now I'm going to ask this one for you, Ben. Samuel's asked it. Would you rather finish in a top 8 position with a typical Newcastle Cup run, or finish 15th in a scrap and win a domestic cup?
I'd pick win a cup. I think. To even go to Wembley for us, I don't think we've ever been to the new Wembley besides the Tottenham game. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but
no, we haven't.
But
yet.
Not yet. I think just imagining even the scenes across Newcastle. I mean, for the Euros alone, and then we know how we feel, obviously, personally about the club. I would definitely choose winning the domestic cup all day. Because, I mean, even winning the cup gets into Europe as well. It's just another bonus. But to win our first silverware for many, many years and to have 45,000 Geordies in Wembley going mental. I mean, finishing top 8, it depends where you finish in the 8, I suppose, doesn't it? Because if you finish 8th, then perhaps not. But no, I would certainly choose domestic cup all day long.
Well, if you look at it, if you think Eddie Howe's been idolised and he's probably going to get, we're finishing anywhere between 15th and 13th, or whatever. So you imagine what sort of, there'd be a statue built outside if you won a cup with her.
Exactly.
Yeah, in that sense. Another question which is coming from Paul is, Sean Longstaff keep as a squad player for next season, or let his contract run and leave on a free?
I think that's a kind of head versus heart situation, isn't it, really? Because, the narrative of a young Geordie boy playing for his hometown club, and obviously it means a lot to him. And I think there is a good player in there. We saw under Rafa what he can do, and in little kind of moments, he has kind of shown the promise that he does have. But, obviously he's been kind of usurped in the starting lineup and to come off the bench by quite a few players. He's still kind of obviously around the squad. I think it all depends on what happens in the summer and where, the the management team and possibly director of football, if we have one by the summer, decide to strengthen the squad and prioritise. If we decide to spend the bulk of our money in the offensive positions, for a striker, then you can possibly see, Longstaff kind of staying around as a squad player. If we decide to kind of spread it around more evenly, possibly not. But, if you look at the central midfield options that we do have, Bruno, I'm sure we'll talk about him in a minute, Willock, Joelinton now, there are other options there. So maybe that kind of means that we don't necessarily need to prioritise that one, at least in the summer window, and that we kind of focus on the strikers. So, yeah, for me, I think he possibly does have a future, but it's going to be really interesting over the kind of next 7 games whether he manages to kind of stake a claim, and also whether he's given the opportunity. I think, we've seen since kind of Bruno came in the other day, you would expect that he will kind of get pretty much all starts if he's fit from now until the end of the season. And then it's a case, I think, for Eddie Howe of seeing how other players might complement him. And it'll be interesting to see whether Sean Longstaff is given a little bit of a trial there. So yeah, we'll see. But I like him. I think there's something there, and for the romance, for the kind of emotional pull of a Geordie kid playing for his hometown club. You've got to want it for him at least.
See, now you mentioned him in this beginning of your answer, and it's as if you've read the mind there, because it is this person that we are going to be speaking to. How good was Bruno Guimaraes against Wolves on Friday? Ben?
I mean, it was for I don't even know where to start. I think his physicality for such a small guy as well in midfield. I think he won 100% of his duels. I mean, it's insane against such a high pressing team as well in Wolves, where I think a lot of midfielders would panic quite a bit when getting the ball. But he was so composed, and I mean, the quality level I don't think I've seen for probably years and years. Like the closest person I can probably compare to in terms of a midfielder being that good is Johan Cabaye, really. And even then, I think Bruno maybe even surpasses him, really. Obviously, we've got a long time to go, and we'll see. But just, I mean, you could tell straight from the start when he first made his first appearance, just the quality that oozes out of him. Even seconds on the pitch, I think he was flicking balls around the corner against Everton, and obviously his goal against Southampton and things like that. But just everything about his game, he's a very complete midfielder with that extra flair as well added to it.
Did you feel a little bit sorry for Joelinton that obviously Joelinton is nobody one that gets the praise, but he was upstaged by his Brazilian compatriot in Bruno, who just went, nah, if I'm starting at St. James's Park for the first time since I've signed, this is my night and I'm going to make it my night, and no one's going to change that.
I think personally, I mean, looking at Joelinton as a person, he seems like very unselfish. And I think his role in the team as well is showing that unselfishness, because he's there as a person to win the ball back and just drive it as a batter ram to the other opposition team. So I think they're two very different players as well. And I think Joelinton will be more than happy to let his compatriot take the reins as well in midfield.
So, Chris, what was it is there anything that stood out for you with him on Friday?
Yeah, I mean, I think he obviously had a very good game. I think since he's moved, I think it's not just hope that he's offered, but he has offered something of a goal threat. And I think that when he was kind of initially linked with the club, and when we were kind of initially told about him, we were told that he's a very kind of intelligent, pretty physical, kind of deep-lying playmaker, but that maybe his kind of like end product numbers, because of the way and position that he was playing, weren't necessarily too high. Like I think when he was in France, he got a couple of goals a season and maybe a couple of assists. But I think since he's come and we've kind of seen the ability that he has actually in the final third as well, and maybe that's because Eddie Howe's giving him a bit more kind of option. Obviously, he scored that really great goal against Southampton, which I'm still absolutely agog at how he scored it.
Yeah.
I had no idea what happened, and I had to watch the kind of replay after seeing it live multiple times to work out what the hell happened. It was an amazing finish, but also, the other day as well, I think he kind of he offered a lot in the kind of final third as well. So I wouldn't be too surprised if between now and the end of the season he pops up with maybe a couple more goals and a couple of assists as well. So yeah, really exciting and kind of good to see, not just is he kind of an anchor man in the centre of midfield that can kind of release the wide defenders further up the pitch, but also he's actually kind of contributing in an offensive sense himself. Just kind of one kind of final thing from Bruno from me. So in terms of a bit of a kind of stat here, so in terms of the top 5 leagues in Europe this season, okay, obviously he hasn't played for us for the full season. He was playing in France, but if you kind of take his stats so far this season, in terms of progressive passes that he's successfully played, i.e. influence on attacks, he has had one of the kind of the most in Europe. He's had more successful progressive passes in 90 minutes than Neymar, than Robertson, than Kovacic, than Pogba, than Bruno Fernandes, the other Bruno, De Bruyne, many other players as well. So in terms of kind of influence and kind of setting attacks going, he's very important and very key, and it's going to be really exciting, particularly as I say, looking forward to the next season and as we kind of hopefully get Callum Wilson back to full fitness. And when we have kind of proper striking options, Chris Wood's great, but he's not the kind of the player that we eventually want to see leading the line. Once we have kind of those options in situ, it's going to be really exciting to see how Bruno links up on them.
Yeah, I do actually think with Chris Wood, he probably had his best game for us on Friday night. Mm-hmm. And they said a lot of pressure on him, when he took the penalty, with the pressure of not really scoring that many goals, not being in there. And if he has seen some of the social media, some of the criticism of him, it took guts to get up there and put the penalty away. And it was a good penalty. The one thing which I would look at now, obviously with Bruno still, and we'll go to you, Ben, on this one, is do you think that performance on Friday has cemented his place in the starting 11 for now on?
Yeah, I think obviously at the start it was about easing them in, getting them used to things, and also just ensuring you don't take out the players that were playing so well in midfield. But I think now that, they're still playing really well, and it almost seems unfair to leave any of them out. But at the end of the day, it's a nice problem to have now. And I think showing that much quality on the pitch and showing that he's clearly well matched for the Premier League as well. It was the big thing for Eddie Howe. I don't think he wanted to bring them in too quickly, and like I say, sacrifice those that were playing well at the time. I think it's good to have the likes of like Joe Willock off the bench and things like that. But I think the good thing is when we come up against different teams, we can change the system a little bit as well to adapt to playing against a deeper side maybe, or those that we can hit on the counter attack, because obviously the likes of Shelvey and Bruno have that ability to find that long range passing, as we saw against Wolves, which allowed us to break the press a lot easier as well. But then obviously later on in games and things like that, Willock has maybe a bit more of a goal scoring threat than the majority of the midfield. So it offers that different dynamic that we maybe didn't have before, because it was very pass the ball to St. Maximin, wasn't it, previously, and then run with it. So it's nice to have that option through the centre of the park as well. And I think Bruno will stay in the team now. I can't see him being moved for Willock when he comes back.
And there's another good question from Samuel here. It's the problem with Callum Wilson, as we know, it's very hard to keep him fit for the whole season. So if we put our faith in him, will Newcastle sign another striker? And if they do, how will you keep both what we'd expect to be top-class strikers happy?
I think it's a tough one, but you see better sides sort of balance their strike partnerships and things like that. So again, it's a long season. If we are preparing for hopefully more games in the cups and things like that, it'll give that opportunity for them to battle out, and as long as they keep it as a healthy competition between them, between all the strikers. And I know they weren't obviously maybe to what the standard we might get here, but Eddie Howe at Bournemouth had a lot of attacking options. He clearly looks that way as well in terms of what he shops for on the market. So I think I have faith in Eddie Howe to sort of find that balance. Again, Callum Wilson, you can put your hat on him to score, but in terms of injuries, I think he'll understand himself that he probably won't be the main striker in future years to come. So I think the motivation now for a lot of those players that think that are work the hardest they can now to stay in that team for as long as possible, become the best second option until eventually it's not tenable at the club. But I think we'll do a good job of balancing those strikers. We've just got to, again, pick, against certain opponents, you might have to change it up as well. So the change of personnel might match that as well.
Now, Sam come back again and said, who's to say that we don't play too front and sign a quick young striker upon either of them? Realistically, we do play a 4-3-3 in essence. So it might be that, what we start to do is we start looking at maybe players who can play either central of the strike, but also out on either the left or the right wings as well. So you've got that flexibility of playmakers. A bit like, NASM, he's played on the left, he's played on the right, he's played on the centre this season. So he's played all across that front line. So that's something that we could probably look at. Another question from David is, do you see a bright future for Elliot Anderson at Newcastle, even with potential big signings? I'll answer that. I said, I think there is a future for him, and I think the performances that we're seeing from him in Bristol Rovers is showing that. I think he is probably one that we're going to have to look at, and I don't necessarily think we're going to make massive. People that probably expect loads and loads of signings. I think it's one of those things that's going to be gradual, maybe a couple of big signings, but I also think the one thing that the ownership probably do want to look at is bringing people through the academy, because eventually that's what it's all about. If you can bring people through the academy and save your money that way, then you can then bring squad players in or first team players in who do a job, but also then supplement them with some big signings as well.
Can I jump in on Elliot Anderson there?
Yeah.
So it seems like Joe Barton really rates him. He's been labelling him the Geordie Maradona. Tongue a little bit in cheek, but it's nice to have that. And obviously, as you say, he's banging the goals in what is it, League Two, for Bristol. I think realistically for Elliot Anderson, I think the club are going to want to have a look at him, but the absolute gulf between what will hopefully be a kind of top 8, top 10 Premier League side next season and Bristol Rovers in League One, League Two, wherever they kind of end up this season, is vast. So I think in the kind of short to medium term, Elliot Anderson, I think he's had a contract extension recently, or if he's not, he's due one. He'll probably be kept on the books and loaned to a championship side, and just kind of I think the club do value him, and there'll be the kind of sense of, okay, he's tested that kind of lower football league level. Let's kind of build him up and kind of see if he has a ceiling. Obviously, we saw with Matty Longstaff, obviously mismanaged. That didn't necessarily work out too well. A couple of kind of dodgy loan spells for him, and name a number of other kind of academy players over recent years. But I think he's a really exciting player, and it sounds like the kind of club do value him. So I think he will be kind of kept on the books, and we'll kind of see where he ends up on loan next season.
Yeah. And obviously, as Sam said, similar to Anderson, what do we know about Lucas Tabola? Well, he is someone that Eddie Howe seemingly rates, because he's pulled him into the senior squad training and had him on the bench a couple of times there. So Eddie Howe himself has looked at him and seen something about him. I think even when people have watched the under-21s and he's been in there, I think they've seen someone who can do that. And I think it might have been him who put the cross in for Santiago to score his first goal at St. James's, if I remember, in that game that was at home. It is now, just going back to obviously the Bruno, which is Paul's asked, is so if Bruno's set in stone, who's the other two in midfield? Because obviously Shelvey does the defensive work, and I don't think that's what Bruno is. But then is it Big Joe or Little Joe that's going to complement that? Or come the summer, do we bring Bruno's best mate in?
I think for me, like I would disagree a little bit with that. I quite like Joe Willock. Obviously, we saw what he can do. Little Joe, I like that. Actually, for me, I think that Bruno can do that defensive work. We saw in France that he can kind of break up play and transition it forwards. So actually, for me, I'd probably we'll see what happens with Big Joe in the summer. But actually, for me, I think Bruno in the defensive role, Joe Willock in a more box to box, and either Joe Linton or competition for him brought in. I think Shelvey is obviously getting a bit older. What is he, 31 now? I think in terms of the style that he plays, those kind of long balls, Bruno can do that. So if you're looking at kind of like players to do distinct roles, I think that in terms of the players that have the most crossover, I think Shelvey and Bruno probably have the most crossover there. And for me, Shelvey, while he's had kind of ups and downs over his time with the club, he's contributed at important times. But I think we are reaching probably the end of the road for Shelvey. I think he probably will stick around for next season. He'll probably be kind of brought in and maybe kind of phased into more of a squad role. But for me, I'd probably actually phase him out and keep Joe Willett in the squad. But that might be a controversial view.
I don't think it is. What we'll do is we'll just move on to the final part now. Now, this isn't let's have a look at where Everton are, as fun as it may be. But what we're going to do, and we're going to look at, and it is the question of, can we realistically finish in the top 10? And what we'll do, we'll go, do you know what? I'll tell you what, I'm going to be mean, and I'm going to say, Ben, I want you to answer that.
Don't shoot me, but there's so many teams in the way. That's the only thing that makes me think otherwise.
We have beaten Wolves, which were on the top 8, which is something we haven't done. So,
personally, I don't think we will. I think we'll finish maybe just outside 11th or 12th. But looking at the optimistic side, the possibilities, obviously, even the teams around us, Southampton, Brighton, Aston Villa, they haven't been in great form. Even obviously, like you say, we beat Wolves. Leicester are very up and down, and we've got them to play as well. And Crystal Palace the same, obviously, the next 2 games. So I think, to be fair, it could actually go down to those next 2 games in terms of whether we're finishing the top 10. But I think there's a lot of teams around us that we can definitely finish above. But I just think the top 10 is maybe a bit too far for us at the moment. I think we've got quite a few hard fixtures as well after Leicester and Crystal Palace. Obviously, we've still got Norwich and Burnley, so it's not too bad of a run. But I think by that point as well,
we've only got to face Man City and Liverpool. Not exactly difficult ties, are they? Yeah.
Arsenal as well.
It's not like Man City and Liverpool have anything to go for. Yeah, it's fine.
Well, also as well, game at St James's Park. Do you know what I mean? I think
which is a sellout, the Liverpool game now.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, you know what? I'm going to change my mind. I'm going to be optimistic and I'm going to say yes, because why not? We've seen this happen under Rafa, where we went on an amazing run towards the back end of the season. When it's such a positive atmosphere, you feel like you can sort of beat anyone. We've got a solid defence at the moment, and going forward, we are looking a lot more threatening. So, you know what? I think you know what? Yeah, I'll say we can finish in the top 10. Why not? I'll change my mind halfway through. Very fickle, but
I think we've got Kevin Keegan in the comments.
I did see that.
See now, Chris, would you be more confident if we beat Leicester on Sunday?
Oh, I don't know about that. I mean, I think like realistically for me, I don't think we're going to get to top 10. I think for me, even if we beat Leicester, I think that trio of games that we've got in Liverpool, Man City and Arsenal that you just mentioned, I think that's just going to be too much. I think, yes, in terms of form at the moment, there's a lot of teams that are bunched around there. We're actually playing in better form, even with those defeats, than quite a few of them. Brentford are performing slightly better than us, but I think those are anomalous results. And we're pretty much on par with Palace. We're better than the other teams around us. Southampton, Villa and Brighton. Our form over the last kind of 5 or 6 is better than them. That said, that kind of trio of games I think is kind of going to do for our top 10 hopes. But I think the final thing that I would say on that is look where we were kind of 4 months ago, and the notion that we would be speaking in mid-April about finishing 10th would be absolute pipe dream stuff. So I'm not going to get too het up if we don't get top 10. If we finish 13th, given where we came from the season, or even 15th, it will be a triumph of a season in the circumstances. Obviously, next season is a very different kettle of fish. I think with the resources that we've got, hopefully the kind of good momentum into the summer, I would hope for a stronger start and to kind of really kind of push for that top 10 and possibly beyond into the kind of top 8 next season. That's a very different kettle of fish. But this season, let's not forget kind of where we've come from in terms of the difficulties. But no, not top 10 this season, I don't think.
Next season I'll take just not being in a relegation fight, to be fair, because I don't think I can take these much longer there. The one thing which I will say when you're on about obviously stats and the form of Aston Villa and that, if we go off the stats since Eddie Howe joined, which was at the same time as Steven Gerrard joined Villa, Eddie Howe's won 29 points, Steven Gerrard's won 26. Yeah, so and I don't think that gets banded it. Yeah, I don't think people look at that and look at how good a job Eddie Howe's done in that sense. Maybe if it came in that a few games earlier, maybe the top 10 might have been something that was realistically something that we were looking at. But or even maybe if we'd kept like Kieran Trippier fit, So there's all those things where maybes in that may have happened. I said I'm just happy to be in a position where we are now, where we seemingly look as if we're safe. And as long as we finish the season safe, I don't care where we finish, even if it's fourth bottom, and we'll lose everything. As long as we're safe and we're in the Premier League next season, that's all that's going to bother it for me. We'll just do one fun quick little one just before we go there, which is a question from Samuel. Which former Newcastle player would you sign? Mikel Merino, Ivan Toney, Kevin Mbabu, or Gini Wijnaldum? We'll go with you first, Ben.
Purely because of where we're kind of looking at strength, and probably Ivan Toney, because I think this season as well, he has proved, as well as his goal scoring, that he's got the physical attributes to deal with the Premier League, and he's got that quality. And he as well, if we did have the likes of St-Maximin playing around him, his hold up play allows midfielders to drift in and wingers to drift in, and I think. Generally, I think it would actually be a really good option for us, especially with his age and things.
I honestly don't know where these rumours are coming from, but honestly.
What the hell? But no, I think even Ivan Toney would be probably the best option. Just again for where we're looking to strengthen as well.
I think for me, I'd probably go Merino. Obviously, a player that we had for a season. We didn't see a huge amount of him. What we did see, I think, was quite exciting. Very young when we signed him. What was he, 21? Under Rafa. Obviously, kind of, I think, too young for a move to England and to a club where the scrutiny is so high. But obviously, has kind of proved since going back to Spain that he does have a lot and is very exciting. He's been linked with like a £50 million move, to us, to Man City, to Liverpool, to whoever. I don't think it's likely, but I think in terms of exciting young players, youngish players, and he is still young in Europe right now, I think Merino would be the one for me. I think Toney is a good player, but I'm not sure. I don't necessarily know whether he is a kind of like top half of the Premier League player. But we'll see. Maybe Brentford will go on the run that we've just talked about, Newcastle hypothetically going on. And maybe they'll get in the top 10. Who knows? But yeah, Merino for me.
See, for me, Ivan Toney, the one thing that puts me off is his attitude and behaviour, because it's twice that he's seemingly been caught out, being quite negative towards Brentford. So you're looking at that and thinking, do we really want that sort of mindset at the club? Probably not. In Mbabu, we've got Trippier. And in that sense, and I think at the moment, Kraft's probably up there, probably just edging Manquillo as being like cover, and he hasn't really put a foot wrong forward. I'd love Gini Wijnaldum back. The age is the one thing that's questioning me, but maybe could just do something for a couple of years, whilst we're transitioning. Because I think Merino's probably one that will be out of reach for us right now. I'd probably go for Jeannie just for the romance of it, because you only had one season with her. And yeah, I just think you'd do great for her. But what we'll do is we'll finish up there. Oh, Sam's just turned around and said he'd take Jeannie. So see,
Yeah,
he agrees with me. Good taste. But what we'll do is we'll wrap up there. This is going to be weekly, so we are going to be here each Wednesday. Obviously, next Wednesday is the Palace game, so we won't be here, but you will, probably have the luckier side of things, because you'll have the lovely Emil taking you through the post-match reaction instead, and we'll be back in 2 weeks' time back again. So join us again. Yeah, if you want to get people to join in and have more comments and question us or challenge us, if you don't agree with what we're saying, then we'd love that as well. And we'll see you next time there. So thank you for joining us. It's been probably nervy for me and for the rest of us for being the first one, but hopefully this will get better and smoother as things go on there. So thank you for joining us, and have a great rest of the evening there. Thanks now.